Hi, friends, and welcome back. So, I'm sure you saw the thumbnail. My little short, I posted that on X. Normally, I don't really post much on X, but it got a lot of traction on X and a lot of angry people kind of replying. Even got a reply from Juicehead, someone with like several 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. I was rather shocked, surprised, appalled, and excited for this. Basically, he accused me of not being concerned with accuracy, and trying to depict that there are more players than Steam actually shows, which is true. There are more players than Steam actually shows, but for accuracy's sake, I decided to expand that 60-second video into as much time as I need. So if this video takes me 4 hours, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I'll let you know on a little secret here. Eclipse is a data analyst by profession at a very large financial institution. So I do this for a living. YouTube is my hobby. So we're going to go ahead and break down Steam concurrent players, and what it actually means, what it's good for. We are going to also break down daily average plays on mods. How's that actually defined? How's that registered? And what's that mean and what it is actually good for. We're also going to look at what is the optimal solution for measuring a game's popularity. I'll give you a heads up. We don't have it. We don't have the optimal solution for that. It's just not publicly available. Um, After that, we are going to go through the comment section on X, because when I posted this to X, people got mad. They were fuming, angry. Um, I was really surprised by it. Like, wow. But, they got fuming mad, and some people had some questions around the data. Some people also misinterpreted what I said. Juicehead there was responding to someone who was misinterpreting what I said, and misrepresenting the information in the data I presented to everyone, to basically say that I was intentionally inaccurate, which is not the case. I'll pull up the video, we will watch it again, and we'll examine my words carefully of what I said. I will say that was a short. I had to keep it under 60 seconds, so I had to be extremely precise and accurate with my language without having too many words. And this is a very nuanced, complicated topic. Probably not the best avenue to do it as a short, but you reach a lot more people doing that. So we're going to do a long form version of it, and I am basically going to take as much time as I need. If this needs to be a 4-hour video, do not worry, I have plenty of B-roll for it. But I guess the first thing we will do, there is a part of that video I was inaccurate in. I had a misconception that what was it? The uh, Starfield script extender stopped your runtime on Steam. This is not true. This is not the case. And like, there is a way you can do it by going in offline mode, and I've heard people do that to stop updates, but I also heard there's a lot easier ways to do that without like disabling, the time tracking and the achievements. So for all intensive purposes, what we are going to do is we are just going to assume that Steam concurrent players is 100% accurate. Why are we going to do this? Because it actually helps my argument. And it's a point I am very willing to concede because it helps my argument. And my argument is going to be that Steam is just irrelevant in the grand picture of things. But, let's go ahead and get started with looking at Steam concurrent players. So here we have the Steam concurrent players chart, and this is the one that's typically shown to everyone. There's actually several different views of this chart, but this is the most dramatic one, and this is the one that's usually on YouTube. And a lot of YouTubers will just call it the player count, which is deceptive. But this is the Steam concurrent players chart. So what do we mean by concurrent players? We mean players that are playing simultaneously. This is a lot different from daily unique players, which isn't charted here. So things that we need to consider is with concurrency is overlap. So the greater play session overlap, the greater concurrency we're going to see, higher numbers. So this is things that we need to consider because it does throw things off. So what in Starfield causes players to have longer play sessions? One, when new content is released. That is primarily going to be a major driver of spikes around DLCs and the initial game launch. People were playing longer sessions because they had fresh and new content. They were playing like 8 hours at a time, causing more overlap in their play sessions, artificially inflating those peaks. And artificially deflating those troughs when those that new content's not available. People are having shorter play sessions, etc. So this in no way, shape, or form should be sold as the player count, and mainly it's because it's concurrency. It's just describing what the top simultaneous player count was throughout any given day. And it's mainly shown on YouTube just for really dramatic effects. And like this can be rather misleading when we go ahead and we pick the most dramatic of the Steam player charts and just put it up here and then call it the player count instead of the concurrent players. Kind of a major issue I take with a lot of YouTubers is that they do, in fact, say player count instead of concurrent players, and this leads a lot of people, including Mr. Matty Plays, who asserted that there is only roughly 5 to 6,000 players daily occurring. Well, that's not even true for Steam because this is concurrency. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple other charts which are going to kind of spell this out. And this is the charts that, are typically left off screen. But the first one we're going to go ahead and look at is going to be the weekly players chart. So here we have the weekly players chart. So we have a lot of peaks and troughs that are occurring here, and then we can see that there is a gentle upward slope as we get into the weekend, basically with the concurrent players peaking out on Sunday. Now this could be for a couple different reasons. This could be because players are playing longer on the weekends because they have more free time to do so, and we're getting more concurrency, or we just have players that are playing more because they have free time on the weekends. And that's why we're seeing the gentle uptick Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it could be either reason. Either there's more players playing, or there's more concurrency because those play sessions are longer and they're overlapping more frequently, causing higher concurrency to occur. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at the 48-hour chart because I think this is going to really sell the case for you of what the heck is concurrency. So here we have the 48-hour chart. So the 48-hour chart, we can see there's peaks and troughs as well, basically occurring during the night, but relatively smooth chart, basically meaning that we have like a very even distribution of play times. Basically the low getting at 2,500 players, and like the high getting around like 5 or 6,000. And this really does spell out that like people are playing around the clock with this game, but we do have like these peak periods and these trough periods. And one thing I am really going to want to point out is those people that are playing at 3 in the morning, they are not the same people that are playing at 8 p.m. at night. Um, and that's just simply the case. So we have the people that are playing during like those troughs, not the same players during the peaks. And this is kind of what I'm getting at here is concurrent players is it's simply just not the player count for the day. It's the concurrency, the highest concurrency. Um, and it's rather misleading to say player count when you're talking about the concurrent players. It's extremely misleading. In fact, I see it in my comments all the time, and it rather irritates me that a lot of YouTubers will call this the player count instead of the concurrent player count, because that concurrent is very important, nor do they put any kind of explanation of what concurrency is and how this types of charts are really best used. They kind of use it like this weird barometer, but it does have a lot of problems, and we can talk about that a little bit. You can get a lot higher concurrency based off your game design. So if your game is designed to reward idle time, that means that you're going to get a lot of people that are idle in your game. So think of games where there might be like a queue for a battleground or something, where players are just sitting there idle for like 30 minutes. They're going to have higher concurrency because they have longer play times because they're waiting to actually play the game in the game. And it's going to lead to inflated player counts. And this is one of the problems with using this particular chart as a means of popularity, because game producers will start producing games for this specific chart if people start doing that. And what it leads to is games that do not respect your time, where they have a lot of rewards for just leaving the game logged on. And you'll see that with games where they're a grind fest and a half, and people basically play the game idly. They're not even really there, and they just leave the game on to kind of, get these idle rewards that are put in there. I mean, if you would like to comment down below on like any games you specifically know of that do in fact promote idle time within them, I can think of several games that either one, they're not respectful of your time because like they have queues for like battlegrounds and stuff, or they're a grind fest and a half, which would inflate concurrency. Starfield, on the other hand, is very respectful of your time. Like you can pick that up, play it for 15 minutes, and put it back down. It doesn't really reward idle play too much. But we are going to get into one other problem here is if you have a very international fan base, you end up with not a lot of concurrency because people are playing at night while you're sleeping, and then you're playing while they're sleeping. So here we have Klaus. This was a response to a Watchtower post I did a couple weeks ago about the average daily plays of Watchtower. It was 36,000 a couple weeks ago, just like to point that out. But I have no clue what Klaus is saying here, but I guarantee you we are not playing this game at the same time. I am likely playing this while he is asleep, and he is likely playing this while I'm asleep. So this is things like we need to consider when we are looking at concurrency and trying to use this as like a metric to measure the popularity of a video game is like how international is the fan base? Like how spread out over time zones is it? Because we're going to see like weird occurrences happen where, one game might have like all its user base in the East Coast of the United States, and they have very high concurrency, and it causes that chart to be artificially lifted up in comparison to games that are extremely international and played around the world. So it's not really a fair metric for video games because it disproportionately helps them or hurts them based on like how spread out around the globe their user base is. So this is one of those things to consider when using this as a barometer for popularity. I know for a lot of games, this is basically all you can use, but that's something that you do need to consider. Does this game reward idle playtime? If it does, it's going to have very high concurrency because it'll have very long play sessions, which will lead to more overlapping play sessions and a higher count. Or two, like, is the game extremely international? Like, if the game's extremely international, you're not going to get like this high amount of concurrency because you have like part of the player base is playing while the other part of the player base is sleeping, and basically we're not going to get a very high concurrent player count in comparison to a game that's maybe localized in the United States and that's it. And the time zone difference is rather small, so we'll get like a very high concurrency. um, so these are just things like we absolutely need to consider when we are looking at concurrent players. I don't blame people for using this. Like, there is nothing else. I do blame game journalists for using this because they can always reach out to developers for comment on how their game is performing, and a lot of them are just lazy. And this is a public-facing chart, and it just makes their job easier to just look at the chart and then write up, X game is dead or dying, and you'll get the dramatic headlines and the clicks and the views. But at the end of the day, it's lazy journalism. They're journalists. What their job is to do is to go reach out and talk to people, and that is something that they should be doing. Like, especially if you're writing a video, like an article about a video game being dead, the journalistic due diligence would be to reach out to the video game company and ask the developers for a comment where they could either clarify what they're seeing in the Steam chart, or confirm that, hey, yeah, our player base is rather low in comparison to our launch date. But that's how I feel about it. Like, I understand players using this as a popularity metric. One thing I would love to point out is this was never intended as a popularity metric. So one of the problems with using this as a popularity metric, this was originally put on the Steam site as a way for us to measure server demands. Why would you want to do this? We'll get back to like the battleground queue or the matchmaking queue to get into game. This allows players to measure when peak times are occurring within a game, so they can go ahead and schedule when their play session should be, so they can hop onto that online game and not wait in a queue to get onto server, or wait in a battleground queue to get into like some kind of battleground or some kind of matchmaking queue. That's what this is all designed to do, is for players to basically measure server demands. Also, it is meant for developers to measure server demands so they can scale up to those demands and see when their peak times are occurring, so they can be preemptively ready when everyone logs in at 8 p.m. to play Call of Duty or something. And that's basically why Steam Concurrent Player Chart exists. It's a tool meant for players to assess when is the best time they should be playing online video games. But we're going to go ahead and move on to plays and kind of define how plays work. All right, so let's go ahead and define what plays are. So what exactly is a play? A play is basically when you launch your game from the main menu into the actual game and you have a mod installed and activated in your load order. I hope that makes it pretty clear. I'm going to kind of clarify a couple questions I've gotten in the past about this exact metric. One, does a death cause a second play to occur because it's reloading an old save? No, this is what is triggering the play to count is when you launch a save. It's not when you're like reloading a save. So like once you're in the game, that's a play. So basically you would have to exit to the main menu, then load up to trigger a secondary play. So what are some things that could cause this number to artificially inflate? Things that can cause this number to artificially inflate is people having multiple play sessions in a day. That would, well, I don't know if that's an artificial inflation, but it would cause this number to go up and not be a 1-to-1 ratio of the unique players. Don't have that metric. But what are some other things that would cause this to have some issues? If there are players mucking about with their load order, like they're having load order issues, they're loading into the game and then loading back out of the game, adjusting their load order and then loading back in and then loading back out and adjusting their load order. That's things that can cause this to artificially increase. I will make a clarifying statement. You have to successfully load into the game. Like if you have a load and it just crashes to desktop, or you get an infinite loading screen, this is not going to trigger a play. The load needs to be successful. And then what are some other ones? I think that's basically it. That's probably going to be the only two causes to artificially increase this plays count, is going to be like a crash to desktop and people mucking about with their load order. Both of those I'm going to consider edge cases because I rarely get crashes on this game. Especially since the most recent update, I do not get crashes in-game. I get crashes in the, the creations menu frequently, but not in-game. And people mucking about with their load order. But how am I calculating the daily average plays? This is not anywhere available on here. I'm taking the Xbox plays plus the PC plays, and then I'm dividing it by the number of days that have occurred since it was published. If we do the math here with this, we are essentially going to come up with a daily average plays of 36,700 approximately. A couple nights ago, it was 37,000. 2 weeks ago, it was 36,000. So this has been holding very steady around 36, 37,000 plays a day, essentially, with kind of a general creep upward. Probably more people purchasing this. I will say that a couple mod authors did reach out to me in regards to this because, they saw my video and they saw a lot of people getting kind of like rather combative in my comments, and they shared with me a little bit of their internal metrics. I'm going to say they're under NDA, so I'm not going to release any names or say any mods because we can deduce who told me the information based off that. So they're going to remain anonymous. But this is basically what they disclosed to me. They do see actual play counts. They don't have daily average plays. They have play counts. And they also have information like what their library ads are. We can define this term really quickly. A library ad is different from a download because a library ad is the initial download. It's basically your purchase of the mod. Like if I purchase Watchtower, I'm going to get one library ad. If I delete it and then reinstall it, I'm not getting a second library ad. So this is basically tells you how many people purchased a mod or did that initial download and added it to their library. And this is kind of important because what I'm going to disclose to you is very pertinent to this. So these mod authors, they did share some charts with me. I'm not going to put it up there because they're under NDA and we're not going to get them in trouble. But their daily plays, it remains really close to a 1-to-1 ratio with their library ads. Based off this information, what I can assume and deduce, knowing that the player base is not playing every single day, it's just not how people play a single-player RPG sandbox with a lot of cozy elements. They're probably playing it 3 to 4 nights a week. What is probably occurring is there is a little bit of people mucking about with their load orders and having like crashes and stuff, or having multiple play sessions within a day. So based off this information, if I was going to give you a ballpark estimate of like the daily unique players in for Watchtower, I would say it's probably somewhere around like 30,000. I would say it's pretty generous for me to knock 7,000 off the top there and say, okay, those are probably duplicate play sessions or duplicate, we'll just call them duplicate play sessions. The same users generating multiple play sessions. I think that's fair to say, but this being considered, very close to 1-to-1, and both mod authors let me know that they've never, ever, ever seen the plays count exceed more than 3 times their library ads. Not even come close. For the most part, they are very, very, very close to their library ads. And this is like extremely important because when we're trying to measure a popularity of a game, we're not just looking at like the daily players. We want to look at the weekly, we want to look at the monthly players, because people do not play this on a daily basis. And we want to look at, like, for particular, like Watchtower, like how many people downloaded it. That's a more relevant number to us because this is relatively fresh. It's within the past 2 months. And knowing like how many people downloaded it within the past 2 months, how many plays are being generated, and the consistency in those plays, we can tell, like, the same user base is kind of showing up every single night to play this game, or relatively every night. But this basically kind of defines plays. It looks at the potential issues with plays, and how players play this game, and also a little bit of information about some internal metrics that mod authors do have to measure this. And from my conversations with mod authors, a lot of them are really kind of pissed off with like how people throw out concurrent players as though it is the total unique players for the day on Steam. Like, this is just really inaccurate. They know that this is inaccurate, and a lot of them cannot talk about this because they're under NDA, so they can't like hop on YouTube and like go, hey guys, you're wrong. This is not how many people are playing on Steam. This is how many people are playing concurrently on Steam. Which is like a huge difference. This is a huge, huge, huge difference. But we're going to go ahead and move on to what's going to be like the optimal way to measure popularity. So if we were going to make an optimal way to track the popularity of Starfield or any said game, how would it look? It would look a lot like how Facebook does their metrics for their investors, which is they look at daily, weekly, and monthly users. Why do you do this? Because you want to know like who your big fans are, who you're keeping on, like, they enjoy the game but they're not playing it every night, and then like who's showing up like every once in a while. So you would track your daily users. Those are your super fans. Your weekly users, those are your fans. And then you have your monthly users, which are basically your watchers. They're probably showing up once a month. They're checking out the creation store. They might hop on, download a mod, play a mod, but they might not see anything, and they might like build a ship or work on their outpost or something. And those users, you can easily turn into a DLC sale. But that's basically what you would want to do if you're trying to track the popularity. You definitely don't want to just focus on who is playing daily. You want to focus on like who's playing weekly and who's also playing monthly. But let's get back to the conversation at hand, which is concurrent players versus daily average plays. So here's the thing. Steam concurrent players. It is flawed in 2 major ways. The first major way is it only measures concurrency. So it is not a true player count in the sense like you are not getting a daily unique players. You are getting a count of concurrency. This is basically used to measure server demand. So this is kind of like the wrong data for the job. And then 2, why is it really bad? Because it is not measuring Game Pass or PC for that matter. It is measuring Steam. Steam is just a storefront. So there are people that have purchased this as a Windows purchase, which are not being tracked by Steam. There are people that are playing this on PC through Game Pass, and there are people playing this through Xbox, either through like a direct purchase or through Game Pass. So basically, Steam concurrent players is just tracking the storefront. And it's also just tracking concurrency. So if I was going to throw in a ballpark estimate, I would probably say it's tracking somewhere around 5% of the player base. Maybe. Maybe. That's a big maybe. Why I prefer daily average plays over that metric, while it may be inflated, it's not that inflated. And as we can see, and as I was told by a lot of modders, that number is holding rather close to a 1-to-1 ratio with their library ads. Now, I don't assume every player is playing every single day. We probably have a, 70% of the player base is probably showing up on a nightly basis. What I mean by that is they're playing about 4 nights out of the 7 nights a week. They're not playing every single day. They're showing up like 70% of the time, or 70% of the days. So we do have a little bit of excess plays there, but not a substantial amount enough to say that it is a smaller player base than what is being tracked by Steam concurrent players. So that's basically my point right there. Is you are not going to make up the deficit between Watchtower and Steam concurrent players. It's just too great of a deficit. You would have to assume that the people playing Watchtower were generating an average of like 6 plays per person per day and playing every single day. And that's just way too many assumptions to have with a single player sandbox game with a lot of cozy elements. People do not play this on a daily basis. And when they do play, majority of people are not generating multiple play sessions. There are some few edge cases, and I'm willing to discuss how frequently they occur. If you want to leave comments about like how frequently you are generating plays, I'm more than welcome to hear those comments and get that information from you. But I know my experience with the community and my experience myself, my experience watching live streamers, they are not generating multiple play sessions just for fun. They're basically might get like a crash once every 2 months, and I might, generate an extra play session by like checking out the creation store like once a week. So I don't think it's that significant. I'm willing to say that the plays on Watchtower are probably in excess of 7,000 over what their unique player count would be. I understand this is completely speculative, but this is based off of assumptions that exist in reality. Unless you can prove that people were playing Starfield radically differently than any other past Bethesda title, I'm gonna just reject you. I'm sorry. Like you really, the burden of proof is on you to tell me that people are playing this in a radically different way that is generating a ton of plays. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume that they are playing this in a very similar fashion to how you play other sandbox RPGs, where you hop in, you play for a couple hours, and then you log out. But we're going to go ahead and kind of move on to rebuttals here, because I feel that I've spelled that Watchtower is very highly probable has a larger player base than what is being captured by Steam concurrent players. But we're going to go ahead and move on to some rebuttals, because why not? Let's have some fun. So this young gentleman claimed I was coping, and my response to him was, yeah, avoiding an argument is kind of the definition of coping. He promptly blocked me afterwards. He made to try to get in a quick response afterwards and then block me, but I just responded to myself with the screenshot of him blocking me, because you know what? Like, that's the definition of copium. Like, he came out there, avoided the entire argument and the discussion at hand, and just claimed cope. And that's basically the definition of cope. I mean, not only that, he blocked me because he needed space to cope more. But let's go ahead and let's move on to a few other rebuttals here. Now, this gentleman here is not familiar with Watchtower, and he accused me of data manipulation, basically saying that I picked a mod that has been out since launch and had a bunch of plays in the beginning, and we're taking that big bulk of plays in the beginning and averaging it out into the days here. No, I specifically picked Watchtower because I was well aware that this argument was going to come up prior to it coming up. And that's why I picked Watchtower. It was nice, fresh data to work with, and it would allow me to preemptively kind of dismantle that argument by saying, hey, it's not even been out for 2 months yet. But also, as we've seen, I measured it 2 weeks ago. It was at 36,000. You can check my posts on YouTube. I kind of spelled out the math there for you. Not to mention, I measured it a couple days ago. It was at 37,000. And then I measured it again today. It was at 36.7 thousand. So it's holding rather steadily at 37,000 plays a day. So pretty confident that it is not draining plays because it had a huge spike on launch day. So I think that argument's kind of dead. For this next section, we are just going to play the video that I did, because it's important to hear my exact words. And this is basically because the next rebutter is going to kind of misrepresent what I said. And this is very crucial. This is the Steam concurrent players chart, and this is often used as a way to say that Starfield is dead, but I think there's better ways to measure the popularity of Starfield, namely looking at creations on the creation store. We have both Watchtower and Darkstar here, which carry a $10 price tag on them. Watchtower has an average plays per day of 37,000, and Darkstar comes in with 6.4 thousand. Both these are greater than the Steam concurrent players chart, and you're probably asking yourself, how is this? The Steam concurrent players chart does not capture a large portion of the player base, probably just 5%, and this is because it doesn't capture people on Game Pass or people that are using the Starfield script extender, which gives you access to some really cool Starfield mods. So just know, anytime you're seeing that Starfield concurrent players chart for Steam, it is not picking up a large portion of the player base, and it's just not accurate. So we have that out of the way. I'd like you to note, I never once said downloads during that video, nor did I say daily average player count. I used the term daily average plays and Steam concurrent players. I was very specific about using these because I do realize they're kind of apples and oranges, and neither one of them is the count of unique players, even on the Steam store itself. So we really need to consider that. Like, Steam concurrent players is not a unique count of daily players, and this is a misconception that a lot of people have. But let's go ahead and check out this next commenter and what he posted. So I think DeMarco here got a little bit confused by my video. I think I was very clear in enunciating daily average plays, but it looks like he associated with daily average players, which is not what I said. And then there's also something about downloads, which I kind of just ignored because, like, I don't know what he's getting on with that. I didn't mention the word downloads or daily average players once in the video because, like, neither of these metrics are talking about daily average players or total player counts. We have the one which is concurrency, and then the other which is plays. I realize fully that they're kind of apples and oranges comparisons, but as we can see, there is just like huge deficiencies in Steam concurrent players. I mean, it's just a single storefront, and Watchtower is generating sixfold more plays than it is picking up players. So now the people playing Watchtower, I highly doubt that, like, every time they log in to play that they're generating 6 different plays in that session or having multiple sessions a day. I would think that to be edge cases, but we're going to go ahead and look at the interactions he had. So here we can see a young gentleman kind of picked up what I was throwing down and basically threw out the formula that I was using to calculate daily average plays. DeMarco here basically throws that out and says that the edge case is the norm, that a same player is generating 5 to 6 plays in a session. That I'm going to say is an edge case, and it's an outlier. It's probably occurring, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. And that's kind of what I am spelling out in my response here, is that, that's not really occurring. Probably what's occurring is the average player's having less than 1 play a day. And this is likely the scenario. Well, actually, based off of what modders told me, the average player's having about 1 play a day if they include, like, mucking about with their load order and crash to desktop, etc. They're having about 1 play a day because they're like, even though that they're probably only having play sessions 3 or 4 nights a week, at the end of the day, it's equating to probably somewhere around 1 play a day. They're getting very stable and consistent, about a 1-to-1 ratio of library ads to plays per day. So there's internal metrics that track this very well. So I was a little bit off on that by saying less than 1 play a day. So it's probably about 1 play a day. But let's go on here. Definitely nowhere near 6. So basically, his rebuttal is, have you never played and then shut off your console, then started up, basically the multiple play sessions within a day argument or the crash? Like I said, this is going to be like edge cases. These are not regular occurrences. This is just not how people play the game. And then he tries to make an argument that, he's not arguing as a Starfield hater. I did check out his YouTube content. He does seem like a Starfield hater. FYI, the fallacy number, blah, blah, blah. No fallacy on my part. He's making an edge case fallacy here by basically stating that the edge case is the norm. And this is a logical fallacy, by the way. I was trying to be as courteous as possible with him because, people were asking questions. I'll answer them. But that's exactly it. He's making an edge case fallacy. He's pointing to the edge case and saying that is the norm. There's no way in hell that people are generating 6 plays every time they log into play and then also playing every single day. Just not happening. So he's basically stating that because people are buying a premium add-on, that some way, shape, or form that they are playing this game multiple sessions a day. You're going to need to prove to me that people are playing a sandbox RPG with very cozy elements like a competitive online shooter. This just really... Well, I'll just show my rebuttal. And here is my rebuttal, which is basically me stating that, this is a cozy game and it is not a competitive online uh, PvP game where people are playing, multiple times a day, every single day. This is a cozy RPG game where people are playing a couple times a week. Now, I know my audience does play a lot of mods. Would you like to let me know, like, how many times are you playing a week? Are you playing every single day? Because I know I'm not. I'm probably playing 3 to 4 nights a week, and it's usually one play session. That per or one play per session. I'm not generating multiple plays in most cases. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll pause and I will exit to the menu and I'll check out the creation store. But this is not a normal occurrence for me. Sometimes I have crashes. Sometimes I have multiple play sessions in a day. But this is not the norm. It's not the average. And this is basically what I want to spell out here is this is an edge case fallacy. Basically, he's trying to say that the edge cases are the norm, and then he's also going on to say that just because someone's spending $10 to buy a mod, that they've radically changed their play behavior. So now that they're playing every single night. I do not think this is the case. I think people are probably playing like 4 nights a week, 3 nights during, or probably Saturday or Friday, Saturday, and then probably like 2 random nights during the week. And this is it. And they might have like the occasional crash or the occasional putzing around with their load order, but not enough to generate 6 plays every time. Like this is how mathematically how it would work out. If we want to say that the active user base is comparable to Steam, is we need this one premium mod to have 6,000 active users that play every single day, and they generate 6 plays with how they're playing, whether it's crashes, putzing around with their load order, or multiple play sessions. And I find this far-fetched, and I find it hard to believe. Internal data from modders kind of leads me to think that it's also not correct either. Them basically saying that they have a 1-to-1 ratio between their daily plays and their library ads. And I've actually seen these numbers, so I know what these numbers are. And that's basically what's going on here. So really do not think this is the case. So, just wanted to say that I was rather excited that a YouTuber with like 700,000 subscribers saw my post on X and commented on it. I was a little upset that he didn't respond to me directly. He responded to DeMarco, and he didn't address any of my arguments in the 60-second video. And he also questioned my integrity in character to kind of, dismiss my argument. This gave me a lot of confidence that I was over target with what I was doing. So, yeah, if you're not able to address the argument correctly and you resort into like character assassination and attacks, yeah, I'm gonna take it that I won the argument. But let's see here. So he also did say that I was not concerned with the player count. Of course I wasn't, because none of these metrics were the player count. We have concurrent players, which just measures concurrency of the players. And then we have daily average plays, which just measures plays. So yeah, I was not concerned with the average unique player count or the daily unique player count, because we don't have access to those metrics, and nor do I have a way to confidently derive that. Basically, what I was trying to get at is that it is highly probable that the user base for Watchtower is significantly larger than what is being picked up in concurrent Steam charts, which tells us one, either the concurrent Steam charts are, really not the best tool for the job, or two, Steam is like super duper insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and we know why, because like that concurrent Steam chart, like it is only picking up the Steam storefront, and it's only picking up concurrency, and it is missing anyone who did a Windows purchase, anyone who is playing on Game Pass, whether it's Xbox or PC, and anyone did a direct purchase through Xbox. So what I'm saying is Steam concurrent players is probably capturing 5% of the player base, and probably, what's it probably picking up? It's probably picking up about 60 to 70% of the players on Steam. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. It's probably going to pick up 60 to 70, and I'm probably being generous with that, to be honest. Like, it's a real ballpark figure, and it very well could be lower. It depends on like how long the play sessions are, how centralized the user base is when it comes to time zones. But one thing I'll tell you is it's not picking up 100% of the user base of Steam. It's picking up a portion of it because it's measuring concurrency. It's not measuring unique player counts. The one thing I'm going to say is, since Juicehead did bring up accuracy, I've been watching his videos for years now, and he does bring up that Steam concurrent players chart quite frequently. And one thing I will say is he's rather inaccurate when he describes it. So typically he calls it the player counts. And you'll see this in numerous videos. And I actually took some clips. I was going to play them. I've opted to not play them. You can go to his videos, and I'm sure you've probably seen his videos. He gets a lot of views. But he typically calls it the player counts. And if you're one of his viewers and you are unfamiliar with the Steam concurrent players chart, you are liable to think that that is a unique daily players count, by the way he described it, by calling it players count. And this leads me to my next point. I've heard other YouTubers, Mr. Matty Plays specifically, assert that the Steam concurrent players count is the total players count on Steam. And he did it in a recent video, and I covered that as well. So like this is something, like I got accused of inaccuracy, but in reality, Juicehead is the one who is very inaccurate in his depiction of Steam concurrent players. And I don't think he watched my video. I think he just jumped to DeMarco's comment and then kind of, basically did an ad hominem attack to kind of just dismiss me, which is rather silly in my opinion. Like when you do that stuff, you're basically conceding that you do not have a point to make, that you don't have any way to rebut my argument. And my argument is going to stand. Plays in itself is relatively reasonable way to kind of measure popularity, because at the end of the day, people are not playing every single day. They're playing several times a week, but they're also not playing multiple sessions in a day, and they're not playing in ways that are generating tons and tons of plays. There's going to be, occasions here and there where they have like multiple play sessions. There's going to be occasions where they exit the game and check the creation store or what have you. And then you'll have the occasional person that is putzing around with their load order. But this is edge cases. This is not the average play. This is not normal use cases for the game. The average play is going to be basically the person logs in, they hop into the game, and they play it for 2 hours straight, and then they log out. And they generated one play. That is a normal scenario under this game. It is not normal for people to have a 2-hour session where they're sitting there messing around with their load order and generating 6 plays before they actually start playing the game. This does happen occasionally. I can't remember the last time it occurred to me where I sat there putzing around with my load order for a half hour. I did watch someone do that last night. I'll throw a shout out to Swerve. So, Swerve, I did watch him kind of putzing around with his load order, but he's going to be an edge case scenario. He curates a load order that's, I believe it's available on Nexus. He calls it Continuum 2.0. Seems very cool. It's a very large and complicated load order. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. Basically, he's trying to make the perfect Starfield with mods, but this is an edge case, and actually, in the end of the day, it results in less people putzing around with their load order because he puts up and makes it publicly available for people, and he puts in the work to make sure that the load order is functional and working correctly. So when others are using that load order, they just log into the game. So he's the one that is, doing multiple log in, log outs. I think I watched him. I think it was only like 5 times he went to the main menu and back. So that's stuff we need to consider. Even when you're putzing around with a very large load order, it doesn't take that much time to figure it out. So he was like able to figure it out in like, five or so launches before he got to it, and then got it loaded up and loaded in correctly. But yeah, there's going to be those weird edge cases. They're not as common as you think, and it's not everyone. There is positively no way I can possibly imagine that the average person is playing Watchtower every single day and playing in a fashion that is generating 6+ plays. So what I'm saying is Watchtower has a larger user base than is what is being picked up by Steam concurrent players, and what a couple mod authors led me to believe by showing me their internal metrics is that most mods are floating around a 1-to-1 ratio of plays to library ads, and that's indicative of your user base, the people that have library ads. I will say also the information they did share with me, it was with fresh mods, so it wasn't with like stale mods or anything like that. It was stuff that was very comparable to Watchtower in terms of freshness. So it was not like stagnant, stale data that I was being shown. So I really hope this kind of puts to bed these Steam concurrent players. I really don't like it as a statistic for measuring the popularity of this game, and I basically am going to continue harping on daily plays with mods because I think it is a far better metric than Steam concurrent players. I mean, very easy to pick whatever is the popular mod of the month that came out and look at like, hey, how much people are playing this, and assume that the total Starfield user base is higher than this, because we do have to consider things that some people, they are morally opposed to paid mods and they will not play paid mods. Some people are morally opposed to creations in general. They just will not go to creations. You have my respect. I understand the grievances and I kind of share them, but I am willing to kind of like overlook that because there are some cool mods here. And also, I don't see a problem with Bethesda being compensated for mods whatsoever, nor mod authors. Um, I think, as long as it's a fair deal, I'm fine with it. But that being said, we do have particular user bases that, one, they won't touch creations, two, they won't touch paid mods, and then there's some people that only play Starfield in a vanilla way. They will only play Bethesda content, meaning No mods except for Bethesda released mods, and that is it. So we need to consider that when we're looking at Watchtower and we're looking at that 37,000 plays a day, which is probably a 1-to-1 ratio with library ads, or pretty darn close to it, that there is a lot larger user base outside of that. There's a lot of people that do play mods, but they haven't picked up Watchtower yet because it is that premium price tag. It's got that $10 price tag. There are people that are playing Starfield that just aren't at a good point to pick up Watchtower yet for storyline purposes, and like they're just waiting till they get to the proper point. So that being said, I think the user base is substantially larger than what Steam Concurrent players leads us on to believe. And this is highlighted by the uses of Watchtower in itself, in its success. It's a very successful mod, but we do need to consider there is a broader user base that they're not touching paid mods, they're not touching creations, they're not touching anything other than Bethesda released content. So we do have a larger user base out there than what Steam does lead us to believe, or Steam concurrent players. And in fact, there's probably a larger user base on Steam than what Steam concurrent players leads us to believe. And this is basically why I think it's a flawed metric. And I also think it's a flawed metric because it's often depicted as the player count, to use Juicehead's words, or to use a little bit more accurate terms, as a unique player count daily, which it is not. It is not, and it's probably not even close to what the daily unique player count is. That's probably, like 40% higher than what is being depicted in concurrent players. But it could be substantially higher than that. It really depends on the player base itself and how spread out it is across the globe, which I don't really know, but I do know there are a lot of international players on this game. I get comments from them all the time on my videos. It's been rather interesting because YouTube has an auto translation function at this point in time, so I do get a fair amount of comments from international users of this game, and I do know that there is a large fan base in Japan, large fan base in Germany. I get a lot of comments from people from France, a lot of South America, but they would be the same time zone as us. So for our sake in conversation, South America, they're probably going to share the same concurrency as the United States, but we also have a lot of British users as well. And these things are things we need to consider because they're going to be playing at different times than us. And it's not going to show up on a Steam concurrent players chart because, if Bob is playing at 8 p.m. his time and I'm playing at 8 p.m. my time, and there happens to be like a 6-hour gap between our times, guess what? That counts as 1, not 2. But as always, thank you very much for your time and sitting around and watching this all. I appreciate you, and please enjoy your night.